The castle was supposed to be safe. That's what everyone believed until the Thunder Crystal appeared and turned their entire world into a nightmare made of lightning and shattered gemstones. Sophia discovered it in the royal vault during what should have been a simple errand. The crystal sat on a velvet cushion, pulsing with an eerie violet glow. Beautiful, mesmerizing, completely off limits. But when Amber's enchanted bracelet accidentally brushed against it, everything changed in an instant. The crystal erupted, sending jagged bolts of electricity through the stone walls, transforming the peaceful kingdom into a storm that defied every law of nature. Now picture this. You're standing in a hallway where the floor beneath you crackles with energy. Each step could trigger an explosion. The ceiling rains down crystallized lightning that shatters on impact, creating more chaos. The very air tastes metallic, charged with so much power that your hair stands on end even when you're nowhere near a bolt. This wasn't weather. This was something far stranger, far more dangerous. Sophia's first instinct was to run. Smart choice. The initial blast sent her sliding across polished marble as fragments of electric crystal embedded themselves in the walls around her. James grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a stone pillar, just as another surge carved a smoking trench where she'd been standing moments before. They were trapped in the East Wing with no clear path to safety. Here's what made this particular crisis so terrifying. Normal storms eventually pass. They exhaust themselves, run out of energy, dissipate into nothing. But the Thunder Crystal fed on its own chaos. Every bolt it produced created more crystalline shards. Those shards amplified the electrical current. That amplification spawned additional bolts. The cycle was self-sustaining, growing exponentially worse with each passing second. Cedric appeared from a side passage, his robe singed and smoking. For once, the royal sorcerer wasn't making excuses or trying to spin the disaster to his advantage. His face showed genuine fear. He'd seen magical catastrophes before, survived curses and enchantments that would terrify most wizards. This, however, was something entirely different. The crystal wasn't following magical rules. It was rewriting them. Amber emerged from behind a tapestry, her dress torn and her usual composure completely shattered. She was shouting something about the bracelet, about not meaning to touch anything, about how this wasn't her fault. Sophia didn't have time to process the blame game. A massive bolt split the air between them, so close she felt the heat sear her cheek. The impact created a crater in the floor, revealing the dungeon chambers below. They needed a plan. Standing still meant getting struck. Running blindly meant the same outcome. The storm was intelligent somehow, almost predatory in how it targeted movement. Sophia noticed the pattern first. The bolts didn't strike randomly. They responded to noise, to sudden motion, to anything that disrupted the charged atmosphere. Move slowly and deliberately. You might survive a few seconds longer. Panic and sprint, you'd be a lightning rod. Clover bounded up from the garden level, fur standing straight up from static electricity. He'd narrowly escaped 3 separate strikes, and his usual cheerful demeanor had been replaced by pure survival instinct. Even the castle's bravest rabbit knew when to admit defeat. He pressed against Sophia's leg, trembling but alert, watching for the telltale shimmer that preceded each bolt. The crystal itself had grown. What started as a fist-sized stone now dominated the center of the vault, pulsing with enough energy to power 1,000 storms. Tendrils of electricity crawled across its surface like living things, reaching out, searching for pathways to discharge their payload. The vault doors had been blown off their hinges. There was no containing this anymore. No locking it away and hoping for the best. Sophia's amulet began to glow. Not the gentle warmth she'd grown accustomed to, but an urgent heat that bordered on painful. It was trying to tell her something, warn her about what came next. She'd learned to trust these sensations even when they didn't make immediate sense. The amulet connected her to a legacy of princesses who'd faced impossible situations. Surely one of them had encountered something like this before. James suggested making a run for the throne room where their parents were likely organizing an evacuation. Cedric argued for his workshop where he kept counterspell components. Amber just wanted to get as far from the crystal as possible, direction irrelevant. Each option had merit. Each option could also get them killed before they made it halfway. Another surge, this one different. The lightning didn't just strike, it lingered. Bolts connected floor to ceiling, creating cages of pure energy that slowly contracted. They were being herded, pushed toward the vault whether they wanted to go or not. The crystal wasn't just defending itself. It was drawing them in. Sophia watched the patterns shift. 5 bolts struck in sequence, creating a rhythm. Then 7. Then 3 quick bursts followed by a pause. There was something almost musical about it, like the storm was trying to communicate. Ridiculous thought. Crystals didn't talk. But magical crystals that generated infinite lightning storms probably didn't follow normal rules of possibility. The amulet's heat intensified. Sophia pressed her hand against it, and suddenly she understood. The crystal wasn't attacking. It was afraid. Something had awakened it prematurely, torn it from whatever dormant state it had maintained for decades in the vault. Now it lashed out reflexively, unable to control the power flooding through its structure. They weren't facing a weapon. They were facing something terrified and overwhelmed. That changed everything. You can't fight fear with force. You can't negotiate with panic. But maybe, just maybe, you could calm it down. Sophia had gentled frightened animals before, talked down enchanted objects that had gone haywire. This would be harder, infinitely more dangerous. One wrong move, and she'd be nothing but ash and memory. But she'd also seen what happened when people gave up, when they decided a problem was too big to solve. The storm would consume the entire castle, then the village, then the kingdom beyond. Someone had to try something different. Someone had to take the risk. She stepped forward before anyone could stop her. Clover's paw shot out, grabbing at her dress. "Princess, that's the worst idea you've ever had, and I've seen you try to befriend a territorial dragon. Trust me." She kept moving, each step measured and deliberate. The lightning adjusted, bolts redirecting to track her movement. Not attacking yet, just watching. Waiting. Cedric's voice cracked behind her. "Sophia, if you're wrong about this, there won't be enough left of you to bury. Then I'd better not be wrong." Her voice steadied even as her hands shook. The heat from the amulet spread through her chest, not burning, but anchoring, reminding her she wasn't doing this alone. 3 more steps. The air grew thick, charged with so much electricity that her hair lifted from her shoulders. Static crawled across her skin like invisible insects. Every instinct screamed to run, to dive behind cover, to let someone else handle this impossible situation. She kept walking. The crystal's pulsing intensified. Up close, she could see the layers of energy cycling through it. Brilliant white at the core, fading to electric blue, then violet at the edges, where it bled into the surrounding air. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. She'd never seen anything like it in all her adventures. "I know you're scared." Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but in the electrically charged silence, it carried. Something woke you up before you were ready. You don't know where you are or what's happening. A bolt lanced toward her, stopping inches from her face. She felt the heat, smelled ozone and burnt air. Didn't flinch. Couldn't afford to show fear, even though her heart hammered hard enough to crack ribs. "You're not in danger. No one here wants to hurt you." Steady words. Calm tone. The same approach she'd use with a cornered animal. "But you're hurting us, and I need you to understand that." The lightning cage contracted slightly, testing her resolve. She held her ground, maintained eye contact with the crystal's core. Somewhere in that swirling energy was awareness, intelligence. She had to believe that. Behind her, she heard Amber's sharp intake of breath. James shifting his weight, probably calculating whether he could pull her back in time. Cedric muttering formulas under his breath, preparing contingency spells he'd never be fast enough to cast. Another step, then another. The distance closed to arm's length. This close, the crystal's power resonated in her bones, vibrating at a frequency that made her teeth ache. The amulet pulsed in response, its magic recognizing something kindred in the crystal's energy. "We're not enemies." She reached out slowly, palm open. An offering, not a threat. "Let me help you." The crystal flared. For one terrible moment, she thought she'd miscalculated. Every bolt in the vault converged on her position, ready to reduce her to component atoms. Time stretched. She saw Clover leap forward, saw Cedric's wand swing up, saw James diving toward her. Then the lightning stopped. Not gradually, not fading, just gone. Snuffed out like candles in a windstorm. The sudden absence of sound felt louder than the thunder had been. Her ears rang in the quiet. The crystal dimmed to a soft glow, barely brighter than a lantern. Its surface smoothed, the chaotic tendrils of energy withdrawing into its core. Still powerful, but contained now. Controlled. Sophia's hand made contact. The crystal was warm, humming with restrained energy. But it didn't lash out, didn't defend itself. It just waited, letting her touch convey what words couldn't. "There." Her voice shook with relief. "That's better, isn't it?" Cedric approached cautiously, wand still raised. "Extraordinary. The energy readings are normalizing. It's actually listening to you. Not listening. Sofia kept her palm pressed against the crystal's surface. Understanding. There's a difference. The amulet's glow synchronized with the crystal's pulse. Two sources of ancient magic recognizing each other, communicating in ways that bypassed language entirely. Sofia felt impressions more than thoughts. Confusion, loneliness, a desperate need for purpose that had been interrupted mid-formation. It's incomplete. The realization hit her with absolute certainty. Someone started creating it, but never finished the process. That's why it's unstable. James peered over her shoulder, keeping a respectful distance. Can we finish it? Complete whatever was started? I don't know. Sofia studied the patterns shifting beneath her hand. I don't even know what it's supposed to become. Amber had recovered enough to join them, though she stayed well outside touching range. Maybe it's better to just leave it alone. It's calm now. We could lock it back in the vault with better protections. That's what caused this problem in the first place. Cedric adjusted his robe, trying to reclaim some dignity after their chaotic retreat. Containment without understanding. The crystal has been dormant for decades, slowly building pressure until something triggered its awakening. What triggered it? Clover had crept closer, nose twitching as he tested the air for lingering danger. Things don't just wake up randomly after 60 years? Good question. Sofia pulled her hand back slowly, relieved when the crystal remained stable. Its glow had settled into a steady rhythm, almost like breathing. Whatever crisis they'd averted, it had passed for now. But Clover was right. Something had changed. Some variable in the castle's carefully balanced magical ecosystem had shifted enough to wake a power that should have stayed sleeping. She turned to scan the vault. Most of the magical artifacts looked undisturbed, still locked in their protective cases. But near the back wall, one display stood empty. The velvet cushion remained, indentations still visible where something round had rested for years. The enchanted compass. The one that pointed toward whatever its holder desired most. She'd seen it during a tour last month, had been warned never to touch it without supervision. Now it was gone. The compass is missing. Sofia pointed at the empty display. That's what woke the crystal. Cedric strode to the case, examining the broken lock. Impossible. These vaults are warded against unauthorized entry. Even I need 3 separate permissions to access most items. Well, someone got in. Amber traced a finger along the shattered mechanism. And recently, there's no dust. The pieces connected too perfectly to ignore. An artifact designed to find what people wanted most, disappearing the same day a dormant crystal decided to throw a magical tantrum. Not coincidence. Never coincidence when ancient magic was involved. James circled the empty display. Why would stealing a compass trigger the crystal? They're not even near each other. Because the compass doesn't just point toward things. Sofia moved back to the crystal, watching its pulsing light. It pulls them, creates a connection between the holder and whatever they're seeking. Cedric's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. And if someone used it to search for power, it would lead them straight to the most powerful magical object in the castle. Sofia finished. This crystal. The connection woke it up. Clover's ears flattened. So somewhere in the castle, someone's walking around with a magic compass pointed directly at the extremely dangerous glowing rock. That's just fantastic. The crystal's pulse quickened slightly, not aggressive, but aware. Like it sensed the conversation turning toward whoever had disturbed its rest. Sofia's amulet grew warm against her chest. A warning or recognition, she couldn't tell. But the sensation meant something significant was about to happen. It always did. We need to find that compass before whoever took it realizes what they've actually connected themselves to. Cedric was already moving toward the vault door. If the link strengthens, it could pull the crystal's power directly to them. Or pull them to the crystal. Amber glanced nervously at the glowing artifact. Either way sounds bad. They filed out of the vault, leaving the crystal humming softly in the darkness. Sofia was the last to exit, pausing at the threshold. The artifact's light dimmed as she moved away, almost like it was disappointed to see her go. She understood the feeling. Being left alone with incomplete purpose, waiting for someone to finish what had been started. But right now, preventing a magical disaster took priority over comforting a crystalline entity. The corridor outside felt too normal after the vault's intensity. Afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating portraits of long-dead royals who'd never had to deal with awakened artifacts. Probably. Where do we even start looking? James kept his hand on his sword hilt, ready for threats that probably wouldn't announce themselves conveniently. The castle has 200 rooms. Whoever took the compass wanted power. Cedric stroked his goatee, thinking. They'll go somewhere they feel safe experimenting with it, somewhere private. Amber counted on her fingers. The old tower no one uses. The abandoned ballroom in the East Wing. That weird room behind the kitchens where things echo wrong. The library's restricted section, Sofia added. Or the gardens after dark. Lots of places to hide if you're planning something you shouldn't. Too many options. They could search for hours while whoever had the compass grew bolder with each passing minute. She needed a different approach. The amulet pulsed again. Stronger this time. Actually, we don't have to search. Sofia closed her eyes, focusing on the connection she'd felt with the crystal. The amulet can sense powerful magic. If the compass is pulling energy from the crystal, there'll be a trail. She reached for that awareness, the same way she'd reached for the crystal's consciousness. At first, nothing, just the ambient magic that filled every corner of the castle like background noise. Then she felt it. A thin thread of energy stretched taut between the vault below and somewhere above. Not visible, but present. Undeniable. Her eyes opened. North Tower, top floor. That's the astronomy room. James frowned. Nobody goes up there except Professor Hawthorne, and he's visiting his sister in Friesenberg. Well, somebody's there now. Sofia was already running, trusting the others to follow. And they're drawing more power by the second. The thread grew stronger as they climbed. What had started as a whisper of connection now thrummed like a plucked string. Whoever held the compass was definitely using it. 3 flights of stairs. 4. Sofia's legs burned, but she didn't slow down. Behind her, Cedric wheezed something about taking the levitation platform, but there wasn't time. 5th floor. The astronomy room door stood slightly ajar, pale blue light spilling into the hallway. Not sunlight, not lamplight, the distinctive glow of channeled magic. Sofia reached the door first, pressing herself against the wall beside it. The others caught up moments later, breathing hard. Through the gap, she could see someone standing at the room's center. Their back was turned, but she recognized the stance immediately. Prince Hugo. He held the compass in his left hand, its needle spinning wildly. His right hand extended toward a swirling vortex of blue energy that hung in the air like a miniature storm, the same shade as the crystal's glow. I can feel it. Hugo's voice carried an edge Sofia had never heard before. Not arrogant, desperate. All that power, just waiting. Finally, I'll be more than just the prince who's good at flying derby. The vortex pulsed, growing larger. Through its center, Sofia could see the vault. Could see the crystal responding to Hugo's pull, light bleeding from its core into the magical tunnel he'd created. Cedric grabbed her shoulder. If that connection fully stabilizes, it'll channel the crystal's entire power directly into him. His body can't handle that much raw magic. What happens then? But Sofia already knew. She'd seen the crystal's fury when cornered. He explodes. Cedric's face had gone pale, taking most of the North Wing with him. Sofia didn't hesitate. She burst through the door, the others spilling in behind her. Hugo, stop! He spun around, eyes wide, not with surprise, with something closer to panic. The vortex flickered but held. Sofia? His voice cracked. You weren't supposed to. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're about to kill yourself. She moved closer, hands raised. Whatever you're trying to prove, it's not worth this. You don't understand. Hugo's grip on the compass tightened. Everyone thinks I'm just the prince who flies well. That's all I am. All I'll ever be. The vortex pulsed brighter. But with this power, I could be so much more. James stepped forward. Hugo, we're friends. You don't need to prove anything. Friends? A bitter laugh. You're Prince James of Enchancia. Sofia's the girl who saved the kingdom a dozen times. Amber's practically running the social season. What am I? The guy who wins races? The crystal's light intensified through the vortex. Sofia felt the thread of connection stretching dangerously thin. Minutes left. Maybe less. That's not all you are. She kept her voice level. You taught me half of what I know about flying. You stood up to your father when it mattered. You're loyal and brave and not enough. The words exploded out of him. My father expects perfection. My kingdom expects greatness. Everyone expects me to be more than I am, and I'm tired of disappointing them. There it was. The real wound beneath the bravado. Cedric moved to Sofia's right, positioning himself. Prince Hugo, the compass is feeding you lies. That's what dark magic does. It finds your weakness and exploits it. This isn't dark magic. But Hugo's voice wavered. It's just power, neutral. I can control it. No one controls that much magic. Sofia took another step. The crystal isn't a tool, it's alive, conscious, and right now it's fighting you. As if responding to her words, the vortex shuddered. The crystal's light shifted from blue to an angry crimson. Hugo stumbled, his free hand clutching his chest. Something's wrong. Sweat beaded on his forehead. It's pulling harder than before. Because you're not channeling it anymore. Cedric's voice cut through. It's channeling you, draining your life force to stabilize the connection. Sofia saw it then. The flow of energy had reversed. The thread wasn't pulling power from the crystal into Hugo. It was pulling Hugo's essence into the crystal. Let go of the compass. She reached out slowly. Right now, before it's too late. I can't. Hugo's hand shook. My fingers won't move. It's stuck to me. The vortex expanded, edges crackling with unstable energy. Through its center, the crystal blazed like a captured star. Sofia felt its hunger, its need to reclaim what had been taken, to balance the equation. Hugo had stolen its power. Now it would take his in return. Sofia, we're out of time. James had his sword drawn, though what good steel would do against raw magic, she didn't know. Think. There had to be a way to sever the connection without killing Hugo. The compass was the anchor point. Destroy it, and the thread would snap. But if she just smashed it while Hugo was linked, the backlash might stop his heart. Unless... Cedric, can you create a magical buffer? Something to absorb the shock when the connection breaks? Theoretically. He was already pulling ingredients from his robe. But I'd need perfect timing. The instant the compass shatters, not a second before or after. I'll give you that instant. Sofia turned to James. When I say go, you throw your sword at the compass. Aim for the center. That's a family heirloom. Would you rather explain to your father why Prince Hugo exploded? Fair point. James adjusted his grip. Hugo's knees buckled. The vortex was consuming him, pulling his very existence toward the crystal. His skin had gone translucent, light bleeding through like he was becoming part of the magic itself. Sofia, his voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I just wanted to matter. You already matter. She met his eyes. Now, let us prove it. She reached for the amulet, feeling its warmth against her chest. Not to use its power, to use its connection. The crystal recognized the amulet, trusted it. If she could just convince it that Hugo wasn't a threat, wasn't trying to steal anything, maybe it would release him. She closed her eyes, diving into that awareness she'd touched before. The crystal's consciousness hit her like a wave, vast, ancient, furious at the violation of its sanctum, the theft of its guardian compass. It saw Hugo as an enemy, a thief who needed to be unmade. But beneath the fury, she felt something else. Loneliness. The crystal had been imprisoned for centuries, cut off from the world it once protected. It didn't want to destroy. It wanted to connect. She showed it Hugo. Not the desperate prince stealing power. The real Hugo. The boy who practiced flying until his hands bled. Who stood up to his father despite the consequences. Who wore arrogance like armor because vulnerability felt too dangerous. The boy who just wanted to matter. The crystal's rage faltered. She felt its confusion, its slow recognition that Hugo wasn't truly a threat, just another trapped thing, desperate to break free of expectations that felt too heavy to carry. The vortex dimmed, just slightly, but enough. Now, James threw. His sword spun end over end, blade catching the light. Cedric's hands moved in complex patterns, weaving a net of protective magic around Hugo. The sword struck true. The compass shattered. Energy exploded outward. Cedric's barrier held barely, containing the worst of the blast. The vortex collapsed in on itself with a sound like reality tearing. Hugo fell forward. Sofia caught him, lowering him gently to the floor. His breathing came in ragged gasps, but his skin had returned to normal. Solid. Real. Is he alive? James retrieved his sword, checking the blade for damage. Barely. Cedric knelt beside them. He'll need rest, lots of it, and possibly therapy. Hugo's eyes fluttered open. Did I just almost die? Yes. Sofia helped him sit up. But you didn't. That's what matters. Below them, the crystal's glow had returned to its usual peaceful blue. The vault door sealed with a heavy thud that echoed through empty corridors. Sofia pressed her palm against the reinforced metal one last time, feeling the faint pulse of the crystal's energy behind layers of stone and enchantment. Calmer now. Understood. Hugo sat on a bench in the hallway, head in his hands. Not crying, just processing what had nearly happened. The gap between wanting to matter and almost erasing yourself from existence entirely. I really am an idiot. He looked up as Sofia approached. Aren't I? You made a mistake. She sat beside him. Big difference. Cedric was already drafting new security protocols for the vault, muttering about triple-layer wards and biometric locks. James examined his sword for the 5th time, relieved to find only minor scratches. Amber had disappeared somewhere, probably to compose herself before anyone saw evidence she'd been worried. The crystal would stay locked away. Better protections this time, regular monitoring. Maybe one day they'd figure out what it was meant to become before someone interrupted its creation decades ago. Or maybe some mysteries were supposed to stay buried. Hugo stood slowly, testing his balance. Thank you for not letting me become a cautionary tale. That's what friends do. Sofia smiled. They catch you before you explode. He managed a weak laugh, then walked away, footsteps echoing down the corridor toward whatever consequences awaited a prince who'd nearly destroyed half the castle. Sofia stayed seated, watching dust particles drift through afternoon sunlight. The amulet had gone quiet against her chest. Crisis averted, lesson learned. Another day in Enchancia where the impossible became just another Tuesday. Clover hopped up beside her. So that happened. Yeah. You think he'll be okay? Eventually. She stood, brushing off her dress. People usually are, given time. They walked back toward the main castle together, leaving the vault and its secrets behind. Tomorrow there would be explanations, reports, probably some stern lectures about proper magical artifact handling. But right now, the crisis was over. The crystal slept peacefully. Hugo would heal. The castle stood intact. Sometimes that was enough.